Hello, everybody. Can you hear me good? Can you confirm that you can hear me? Excellent. Excellent. Today we are here, and I will lead a webinar about Delphi component-based software development for building enterprise-grade mobile, desktop, and web applications. Just for quality purposes, all lines except the presenters are muted. And also you can ask questions after each slide, for example, inside this chat area, chat box, or maybe also if we will have a time, we will have Q&A sections in the end of the webinar. Of course, this webinar is recorded, and later everybody who was participated will receive YouTube link, or you can find this recording on the YouTube. Today I will lead a webinar together with Bruno Ferens. Bruno is a CEO of TMS Software, and yes, my name is Serge Pilko, and I am CEO and founder of Softacom company. Bruno is CEO and founder of TMS Software, company which is developing most famous and beautiful Delphi components. Just my opinion. In the beginning, just a couple of words about our company. We are like a Delphi experts, and we are specializing in Delphi migration from legacy Delphi systems to up-to-date Delphi versions, also like Delphi application enhancement, re-engineering, and support. We are located in Belarus, Eastern Europe. In the capital, it's Minsk. It's about 2 million people. Just for understanding where we are. And of course, a couple of words about TMS software. TMS software. If you Delphi developer, I guess you already worked with these components, because I even know, and we also have clients and customers who use TMS software components from Delphi 5 version, and you see that TMS have a lot of components in different areas. It's for VCL, for cross-platform development, for web development, especially it was developed last couple years. It was improved, and right now it's a very strong and stable product. You can see, company was founded in 1995. Bruno, maybe you want to add something and just say hello to today's our participants.
Yes, hello, Serge. Thanks for organizing the webinar and having me here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very good. I hope other guys also can hear you.
So yes, we started with component development back in 1995, which of course is the year that Delphi was born. So we were passionate about Delphi Red development, component development, right from the beginning. It's now 24 years ago, and in these 24 years, a lot of things happened. We started, of course, with VCL component development for Windows platform, and the first new directions in component development were for the IntraWeb framework for web application development that we started around 2002, 2003, in that time frame. So we got from that a lot of experience in creating user interface controls for web applications with Intraweb at that time. And then Embarcadero, or at that time, I believe it was still Borland, introduced the cross-platform concept with the FireMonkey framework. And we were also enthusiasts and then started developing components for the FireMonkey framework, cross-platform components. Initially, this was for iOS only, and then it quickly expanded to include iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows, of course. And yeah, the next step or the next steps were things like Win64 support. Another major transition was adding Unicode support. Recently, there's also the VCL styles support that we are adopting. And over the last 2 years, then we have mainly extended the product lines with our framework for creating web client applications, which is WebCore, and also our FNC range of components. And these FNC components are a result of a long research here that are aiming at developing user interface controls, but also cloud REST API access components with one code base that can be used everywhere, which means for Delphi developers can be used in VCL applications for Windows, or it can be used in FireMonkey applications for all the targets that it supports. And it can also be used in web client applications created with TMS WebCore.
Yeah,
So with one code base, if you develop such a user interface control once, then you can use your work everywhere.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, let's go further. Uh, why did we choose to discuss this topic today? Well, let's consider the company during the process of its digital transformation. Yes, very modern words, which we will discuss on the next slide, is going to get a new software. It can be desktop, web, or mobile. And the first two questions the company will have to decide what technology to use. Sometimes this question go hand in hand with what vendor to choose. And the second question is what architecture design should be underpin the software. And even if the company is not going to build the software in-house, it's desirable for it to understand the design of the software because it affects the budget of the development that is important in itself. But what often is not taken into consideration with architecture is the cost of the future maintenance. And if speaking about newly created software, very important to understand how it will be integrated into the overall corporate system. Uh, and also we divided today's webinar on two parts. The first part is something like theoretical part where we will explain and discuss some concept of component-based architecture, and the second part it's more like will be more in interview format when I will ask different questions for Bruno, because we are like software developers, like outsourcing company. I have a lot of questions about the future, and Bruno is something like we have a client, we are developers, and Bruno like a vendor of the solutions provider for the development, and can answer some questions which were very interesting for us about the future of Delphi development, concepts of the, especially concepts of this development. Let's go further. And Bruno, the first just interesting question, which I'm just asking for the different people, because I can hear the digital transformation phrase from even Keto. I don't know. What do you think? It's just modern world for the marketing, or it's something really new? What do you think?
Well, I think the IT industry always is looking for the next thing and the next hype and the next
Yeah,
buzzword.
I see.
And so I think we all got a little bit tired of cloud, and we all got a little bit tired of IoT, and maybe already tired of AI. And so there's this new buzzword, digital transformation.
Okay.
Um, I believe, or let me say, I understand the digital transformation as the concept of building or transforming all the processes within a company to run based on software, and this software to have this delivered as a service, so hosted by cloud servers, and where things are, or software is no longer installed on the hardware that exists in a company. So that
I see.
that is a little bit in a nutshell how I understand what digital transformation is.
I see. Thank you. Uh, any software development begins with analysis and the design in its architecture. So let's dive in into the subject of designing component-based software architecture. And let's start with some definition of the component. Of course, I know almost everybody knows where is it, because this is why you are here. But anyway, let's imagine that we have a component, and of course, if we need, for example, to add a Facebook share button to our web app, we need a component. And to do this, we will need, for example, study Facebook API specification, but instead of doing all these tasks and spend a lot of time, we just can use a component. And this is what Delphi introduced. This is a component idea. Yes, and this is like the components, like pieces of code, like which are injected to our main project, and they just perform their tasks and perform their routines. If we're talking about, for example, implementing something and communication, something what is working on the like a REST API service, it's not like a component, because it's totally different. It's not applied to the term of component. And we have two types of components. Of course, you know this: visual components for building our UI, and non-visual, like for components for that performing and processing some work with the database, subroutines procedures like calculations, cryptography, and so on. And of course, component which allowing is in fast integration with third-party services. I'm talking about different connectors. Interesting. And even for this question, I'm asking sometimes for me when I'm trying to explain for our customers what's the difference between component-based architecture and classical one. And is there a difference in steps of developing component and non-component based software? And I just prepared some schema which explains to the people what if I'm developing Delphi software. If I'm developing Delphi software, I hear. I see some questions in the chat. You can hear some like echo, or Bruno, can you're hearing only one voice, or you can hear two voices? I see.
Here it's okay. I hear one. I hear just your voice.
Okay, thank you. And I just prepared this such schema which shows component-based architecture when I'm just creating a project skeleton and writing glue code which just perform interaction between already existed components which I selected. If I want to have some marketing software which is working with my database and perform some operations with Twitter, Facebook, and perform some REST API, all that I need just took take some components and implement this logic like a glue code, like get already some data from, for example, REST API to class and to model, and put this model to ORM and put it to database, or perform some unique business logic. Mm. On the right side, you see that, of course, if we are like a developers using Delphi, we can write from the scratch almost everything. We can write our custom grids, our custom REST API providers, REST API connectors to Twitter, to Facebook, but it will take really a lot of time, and it's right now it just does not have a sense. This is why we are talking about component-based software, that for today it's almost impossible to do that, because it's even not about the developing from the scratch. Of course, we can add Google support for our software, but Google is changing their SDKs and APIs, or even Facebook, even months. And instead of working on our custom business logic, we will think we will think about supporting all these SDKs, but it will drive us crazy, and it's impossible. Instead of, again, we will lose the focus, and this is why we have to use third-party components with support. It's of course we can find a lot of free components which were developed, or even maybe some of them supported right now in the GitHub with some community. But for us, if we want to have a stable support of components, so I don't know, we have to choose, of course, paid components. And again, it's from my experience, from my past experience. And when we want to develop, when we are developing new software, for example, and here is I showed the process, how we divide all the tasks on the subtasks, something like create specification, then to get specification with clients, with business owner, product owner, then we design architecture, and then we perform decomposition, all the architecture on subsystems, and we're trying to choose which components to use, because sometimes it's very important to select correct set of components and vendor in the beginning, because then it will be, to change it, maybe it can take a lot of time. And after creating and modeling the requirements, we perform components research. Then we are testing them, of course, and creating prototype with some little glue code, and we are like have a Delphi like UI working solution which performs different pieces, like almost all UI, some operations with database. Our developers touch these new components if this is new components, and then after everything is tested and accepted, we are developing, testing, of course, and releasing the product. Now let's take in the subject of the webinar more specifically by examining it on Delphi technology, and talk about how can we develop enterprise-grade software rapidly and don't spend months and years on this new development. Now, in the beginning, like we have it's our not the first webinar, and we have some traditions. We are Delphi influencers and evangelists, and we have to popularize Delphi, and that's why we also prepared just, guys, 3 slides about Delphi. Maybe it will be useful for somebody if you will have to explain what is the Delphi today. We just can show the up-to-date webinar with our this position. Where is it? And Delphi is a software development tool, modern right now, modern development tool. Delphi is up to date, despite it was developed in 1995, like Bruno already said. This Delphi right now, it's owned by acquired by Embarcadero, and it's it has it has all updates, maybe a couple times over the year. This is a stable company. Interesting information: the chief architect behind Delphi was Andres Helsberg, who was later persuaded to move to Microsoft, where he worked as the lead architect of C#. For me, it's just, guys, it's just like food for the thinking. And after that, suddenly Microsoft introduced .NET C# and Visual Studio 2003. For me, it's like Microsoft version of RAD Studio. The reason to continue using Delphi today, it's really a cross-platform development tool, and for me, it's very good development tool for desktop for Windows. Easy to use and designed for rapid development approach. I can say, if I will compare, for example, VPF development using Visual Studio, or even WinForms development, ugly UI, sorry, but because our company have a deep experience in VPF with WinForms also, and I can say that I can compare. It's really easy to deploy, since executables don't need any pre-installed frameworks, and hence there is no headache about framework version and packaging version, and etc. Huge set of third-party components. Yes, look at TMS Software component sets of Delphi. And also, you can go to Delphi Get It package manager, and you can see how many vendors do we have, and not all vendors listed in the Get It. Like I already said, regular new releases of Delphi and RAD Studio from Embarcadero. And again, like a pros, if you have legacy software developed with Delphi, you don't need to rewrite it from the scratch, like from, I don't know, like C++ or Visual Studio 6 to WinForms and then to VPF, totally different frameworks. But using Delphi, you can migrate your project from legacy BCL project to modern FireMonkey cross-platform project. Of course, it's different tricks, but it's possible. Of course, if we have pros, we have cons, and I won't hide these cons. The first one is the future risks. Will Embarcadero have enough resources to compare on par with other development tools like this Visual Studio, and will we have enough specialists and developers on the market in the future? And my favorite cons, which I hate, is like negative information noise. In the 90s and 2000s, Delphi was started in universities. Now it is .NET, Java, C++, Python, or something else. And young developers consider developers to be Delphi to be obsolete, not fashionable, and their technology. This is what we are fighting and explaining and prepared this webinar, because I don't agree with this. And Delphi is not an operating system owner, so this is self-explanatory. Why it always have a step back from Microsoft, Apple, and Google. And you guys, if you guys know, for example, that if you develop in FireMonkey applications, from tomorrow, Google will decline all new applications, mobile applications, without 64 architecture support. But right now, unfortunately, Embarcadero and Delphi does not have such support, and we have to talk with Google, ask them extra time, and so on. But Embarcadero is working on this patch, on this new feature. This, like, I will not discuss the second item, because I'm talking about right now not like beautiful solutions like TMS Web Core, very interesting solution. I'm talking about classical web applications that we use, because again, Delphi is not owner of operating system. It's not an owner of the internet server, like internet information services. This is why, again, it's not suitable for web development, for classical like web portals and so on. And again, time consuming for the development of complex mobile applications. This again we also have such experience, and if you have a lot of integrations with different systems, you will have sometimes problems because, for example, if some, I don't know, Square, for example, POS has support and SDK implementation works for Xamarin, native Apple, Objective-C, JavaScript for Android. Unfortunately, for Delphi, it will be like almost exceptions that you will find somewhere implemented Delphi SDK. I prepared this slide. It's not Bruno's. And I'm calling this like a TMS Software universe, and we are like developers. We developed different software in different areas, and I can say that using TMS, we can cover a lot of functionality. Sometimes we are using TMS, sometimes other components. It also depends of the requirements of our customers, because they have just some internal corporate requirements or rules. And Bruno, just you heard my position of this component-based development. What can you say? How can we save development time and increase development speed using your products?
Well, I think that components are abstractions of sometimes complex code algorithms, interfaces, technology, and I think it's definitely a benefit to not reinvent the wheel. And I think for developing applications, you can get much faster up to speed, and you can also focus more on the business logic of your application instead of the underlying technology that some of these components cover. And by that, I'm convinced that you can save huge amounts of time. I give one example, and I think that that example should make it very clear. We have, for example, our FlexCell component, which is a component that wraps generating, creating, reading, modifying Excel files in the XLSX format, in the XLS format, with all the details that these file formats support and what Excel supports in formula calculation and all kinds of features of how you can format cells in an Excel file. Well, I'm pretty sure that no one will be able to do something similar natively with Excel files in even, let's say, 1,000th of the time that we internally spend to create this component. So by just using this component, 15 minutes later, you can be productive and add Excel specific features to your application, where you would literally spend thousands of hours trying to do it yourself and studying these file formats, etc. So that's just one small example that I think should make it very clear what amount of time you can win by applying components in the architecture of your application.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's talk about more deeply about the areas and sounds like types of development. And we divided it like desktop, mobile, and web development. And right now, let's start from desktop software development. And we are like developers again. We're also feeling some trends for the next 3-5 years. But you also, I think that you have to feel the trends more better, because it's like a core of your business. And what do you think? What changes, in your opinion, can affect the approaches to development Windows soft desktop application in 3-5 years? What will be with? Will we even have Windows 30 to and Win64 applications in the future, or maybe everything will go to all this managed code, and developers even won't know about these architectures, about these processors, CPU architectures, and so on. What do you think?
Well, I think that ever since Microsoft came up with the .NET framework and managed code, and later the Windows App Store and the requirements for the initial requirements, at least for the Windows App Store, we as Delphi developers were always very skeptical and very afraid that this could affect the possibility to deploy Win32 or Win64 applications for the majority of the customers using Delphi software. I personally think that these things like the .NET framework and the Windows App Store uh, are already long enough in place and are absolutely till this point not anywhere near a position that they will replace or endanger Win64 or Win32 native applications. And also given that the Windows 10 operating system is quite stable, and with stable I mean there's not that much groundbreaking changes anymore in the operating system. It's more like an evolutionary um, model of releases of small new features to the operating system that I personally do not believe that Microsoft will take any action that will endanger Win32 or Win64 applications for Windows in the next couple of years. Of course, there is never a guarantee in software landscape, but that is my personal belief that all the actions of Microsoft in the past to try to push things like .NET and things like the Windows App Store with initial restrictions to managed code only have not really worked. And I personally do not see them change strategy anytime soon.
Okay, you think that if somebody want, for example, develop new software from the scratch or migrate from legacy Delphi application to up-to-date Delphi, they don't need to have any I don't know scaries and just develop and use and go on. Or what do you think? If you will say honestly, uh, do, is it risky, or I can do that and develop with 32 and 64?
I personally do not see it as really risky. Um, I think it's majorly the point of deciding will you only target the Windows platform, or are you looking for a solution that should be cross-platform, where you have customers who are also running Macs or Linux machines. And so I think that is primarily a deciding factor if you will only target Windows, or if there is a desire to target multiple desktop operating systems. And another consideration is it today worth to develop a totally new application that is, for example, not web-based? Because if you develop it for the web platform, then you can, of course, target any operating system with just one code base. Uh, so everywhere where you have a browser running, you can normally use and run your web application.
I see. Okay, next question is sounds like which main visual products for Windows do you have, and what's the plans for the future development? Because we have this Delphi VCL products components from 1995, and sometimes people will think what else we can invent. It's already everything is invented. This is we sell desktop software, and how you are keeping up to date these products, because right now we sell and desktop development, it's not like on the first place and in the first turn in development, even for Embarcadero. And what can I say?
Well, I think a large part of the VCL development going forward is to adapt the look and feel of these components to modern operating system look and feel. So we have done in the last year a huge amount of work to adapt our components, for example, to a high DPI and multi-monitor high DPI situations. That is quite complex work. It's a lot of work. There are a lot of scenarios. So that's one significant part to make sure that VCL user interface controls look as perfect as possible in all kinds of monitor situations. Another thing is VCL styles support. So we've also done a significant amount of work to make our components compatible with the VCL styles. And another part is that other than the Microsoft look and feel, or the look and feel that is determined by VCL style, there are things like Google material design that define a certain look and feel of components that people have come to expect, that they that are visually current, modern, attractive, and people want their applications to look like these user interfaces. And so that's a very important part to keep our components really current with what people expect these days in look and feel. That's one part. Another part, of course, is we receive on a daily basis feature requests, sometimes small features, sometimes big features, sometimes requests for new VCL components. And so we carefully listen to these requests, and where possible, where appropriate, where we estimate that there is a good demand for these features or new components, we also work on these things.
Thank you. I think. Okay, and like a final question about this desktop software development. What do you think? Why people have to start to develop new desktop software from the scratch today? If we can choose some cross-platform, because it's, or even web, and what's the areas of the, or the domains that will be more maybe on the for enterprise products, like for the financial, for insurance? I don't know why, because 10 years ago I didn't think about what to use. 5 years ago I thought, what's the reason to develop desktop if I can develop web and it will work everywhere? What do you think?
There are still a lot of reasons to want to develop Windows desktop software. And I think a major part of that is driven by having to interface with existing other Windows applications. I'm thinking about maybe there is a ERP software, there is some database in the back that is easily accessed, worked with, interfaced with from a Windows application, or there is specific hardware that is controlled by the application that you develop. We have in our group of customers, we have a lot of companies who are developing machines, machine software, machine control software. Um, Also, it can be a solution for kiosk applications, where on low cost, small computers. It's still easy and fast, and these small computers are often cheap. So the total solution, the total cost of the solution is often also low when using Windows desktop software. I also think that many software projects will be something from the past, something that was already created, to give that a new look and feel, or to reuse parts of code that already exists. And so it's also there, it's a benefit in terms of cost of developing if something can be reused. So also there, I think it makes a lot of economical sense to reuse existing parts of code, and therefore target the Windows desktop.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Yeah, that's clear. Let's right now let's go to the section about web apps development using Delphi, of course. And like I already said, everything is moving to web. Maybe it's even not 5-10 years, maybe more. And why do you think people should continue to use Delphi for web development, for Delphi web application development, and in which areas Delphi is good for web development?
Well, I personally think that, and that's actually the reason why we have developed something like TMS Web Core to create web client applications from the Delphi IDE with the concepts that the Delphi users are used to. I think primary reasons, of course, are the learning curve is, I think, as low as possible, then a complete shift to another language, another framework. I also think that we are used as Delphi developers to RAD component-based development. So in many cases, a very rapid way to develop applications. So cost-effective, creating solutions fast. And this is what the Delphi IDE and how RAD still delivers. And so this can also be important. And of course, a last part is the reuse of code. So we have enabled by the TMS Web Core solution to transpile or compile Pascal code to JavaScript code that runs then straight out of the browser. And that means that you are enabled to reuse lots of existing code, and by this, of course, save a huge amount of time to create solutions for customers.
That's clear. I agree. But this was something like from business, maybe business and architecture point of view, like reusable code. But right now, if we talk about the point of application and which kind of software we can develop, what TMS can suggest. Right now, Delphi is more like, can we develop single home pages or web portals, or it's like more like server-side web applications with for some business logic?
I personally think that Delphi and the strength of Delphi and the strength of a solution like TMS Web Core, but that also applies to other web frameworks for Delphi, like IntraWeb, for example, is really to create applications. So if the goal is to create from static company website, or maybe even a company website with some coupling to a database to display products, I think this is not really where Delphi shines, or where the Delphi web solutions shine. I think for this, there are already lots of existing templates, predefined solutions where that you can set up quickly. But if you want to create a client application that runs in the browser. So it's accessible and available everywhere on every device, every platform, um, where you have a quite complex user interface. Then I think Delphi can really shine there, because you can develop this complete client application using Delphi code, Delphi components, Delphi classes. It's with a typical Delphi strong type language. So you feel 100% familiar doing that. And I believe that doing so, you can reach a high productivity.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned about the server-side business logic, by the way, yes, in the beginning of July, we had a webinar about moving Delphi apps business logic to the cloud, and I provided some solutions, not only like for Delphi, it's like that we can use Delphi like a Delphi Red server, we can use Delphi custom solutions, we can use, for example, Microsoft Azure services, uh, like serverless computing solutions, and we can use some ready solution like Dream Factory. You can, guys, you can just again go to YouTube and check this our webinar recording. Like Dream Factory, it's like ready commercial, like 1550 commercial and open source solutions for organizing REST API server. And we did not mention very too detailed what TMS can suggest for us for building this REST server. And Bruna, right now you have a chance to explain us what TMS can suggest us if we want to create a REST API server from the scratch using Delphi.
We were one of the companies that offered a product to create REST APIs from Delphi from the very beginning, even before Embarcadero offered the RED server, EMS it was initially. So TMS X Data is the product that is suited for creating Delphi-based REST API servers. And I believe it shines in terms of easy coupling to all kinds of databases. So we even have direct Microsoft SQL Server support. So where you can use it on a Delphi Professional without the Fire Deck. But you can use it with Fire Deck as well to access any kind of database that Fire Deck supports. And I think it especially also shines in terms of performance, stability, in terms of licensing. Well, this is very easy, no nonsense license attached to it, that you can create as many servers as you want, and there is no time restriction or domain restriction, whatever, on these services. And also, we have created an Xdata client dataset for web core applications, which should make the communication between a TMS web core web client application and an Xdata REST API backend as seamless as possible.
And this Xdata product, does it have already like like under the hood ready solution for like a database wrapper for the operations like to the tables like select, edit, delete? If I don't know the uh, I don't want to build any models and just I want to perform something like I provide database table and I want to, for example, I provide list of fields, key field, and I want to prepare some JSON and insert this and send this JSON to the Xdata and insert the data to the database. Is it possible? Does it have on the ready functionality like RED server for the standard operations on the database tables?
Yes, of course. It featured this way before RED server had that. So it has the open data like query interface. And so an HTTP put will insert something, and HTTP delete will delete the record. So all these operations are of course also JSON based, and this is all possible out of the box with TMS X data.
I see. Great. And the little question again, like practice, the question for our practice: can I host somehow this REST API service to the shared hosting or Azure Web Shared Application or Amazon? Not like virtual machine. I'm not talking if I don't have an access, direct access to the web server. How can I share it? Can I host it somewhere?
You can create from an X data application. You can create a Windows-based executable or service executable, or you can create a Linux-based server application. And so
CGI, something like this.
our X data demo is hosted on Azure, for example.
No, Azure Virtual Machine, or can I create just GoDaddy account and upload via FTP some files and just use it?
That is something that I will need to ask my colleague Wagner, who is overlooking the Xdata product. So I will need to ask him first to be sure that I give 100% correct answer.
Okay, maybe in the future your team will prepare some blog posting about this question, because as I know it's interesting for different clients and customers of TMS software.
I write it down and I will talk with Wagner about it.
Yes, thank you. And right now let's talk, because right now let's talk about the third part of our domain and technologies, and let's talk about mobile applications development. And if I were to start today new iOS and Android app development from scratch, what are suggestions? And I'm not talking about, let's divide to two questions. If we're talking about not about Delphi, and if we're talking about Delphi, what I have to use if I don't know Delphi, if what I have to use if I am using only Delphi.
Well, I think that if you are not using Delphi,
No, sometimes if I never before developed mobile apps using Delphi, it can means that I don't have Delphi, because it's like only object Pascal syntaxes and nothing else. But maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, continue, please.
well, personally, I think this is. I think the landscape or the possibilities that if you do not use Delphi, and I'm thinking here about Android Studio using Xcode directly, or using other frameworks like React Native, for example. Well, of course, as a Delphi developer, this is a way more difficult learning curve to go this way. That's why I think the FireMonkey framework shines in this respect, that you can really create a one code base solution for targeting iOS and Android mobile devices. Other than that, of course, I think that the new upcoming progressive web applications also start to offer amazing capabilities, and also this can be created from a single code base targeting mobile iOS and Android devices. So my personal preference would be to use the FireMonkey framework if it needs to be native applications that you can install, and where definitely when you need some specific hardware resources on the mobile devices. But I would definitely also keep an eye on progressive web applications and discover the enormous potential and the easiness of deployment of such type of applications on mobile devices. And very important also the lack of restrictions that especially iOS imposes on this kind of applications.
I see. And you mentioned, of course, you mentioned FireMonkey, and you also mentioned that landscape is changing all the time. And what do you think and what do you feel? What's the future of FMX? Will Embarcadero continue to support it? Because I know how hard to support it if iOS provide new SDK. Embarcadero write all the wrappers and support all these SDKs, and at least most popular SDKs from the iOS, because it's even now FireMonkey does not cover all SDK on features classes. And what do you think? Is this type of the solution? It has chance for the future? Will it be improved and developed by Embarcadero, for example, in 5 years or in 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think this is seriously challenging. Also knowing that what we see now at this very moment, for example, the transitioning of Android 32 to Android 64, which is kind of, well, not trivial for Delphi developers. But there's also the future removal of OpenGL that the FireMonkey framework is based on for iOS application, where Apple will replace this with Metal. And so this, in my opinion, will require a serious rewrite of the underlying layers in the FireMonkey framework to continue to support iOS. So definitely this is a fast-moving landscape. This is probably the fastest-moving landscape of all software platforms, targets. And it's for sure, it is a challenge for Embarcadero to keep up with this. But in my opinion, I think they have no other choice, because I think the cross-platform feature of the Delphi IDE is really crucial to stay important and relevant in the software landscape.
Yeah, I see. And let's go back to the TMS Web Core. No, I'm talking about TMS Web Core because for me it's like cross-platform, solution. It's not like, of course, if you guys will go to the Delphi, it's not like FireMonkey project where you're using TMS Web Core components. TMS Web Core, it's a totally different product, a totally different type of the project which you are creating. And Bruno, can we say that this right now is your main and most popular product which you are providing in your, I don't know, in your prospects and your advertisement, and you're bidding on this product in the future?
Latest main new product that we developed. So it's kind of normal that we pay a lot of attention to it, that we devote a lot of development on it, and also yeah, because we think it's a very nice technology and something that can make a Delphi developer really productive, also targeting the web platform. Saying that this is our main product today, this is, I do not see it this way. I see it as a very important part, but we that Delphi developers still use VCL applications, VCL development on a daily basis. And so VCL components do remain crucial and very important. We see that Delphi developers develop cross-platform applications. For cross-platform, we position our FNC components as crucial because these FNC components are cross-platform. And as an additional advantage, you can also use FNC components in web applications with TMS Web Core. If you have some projects where you would like to target Linux clients, I do know that by now Embarcadero offers also FMX Linux for free, but you could also use the Lazarus IDE and these FNC components to create maybe from the Lazarus IDE running natively on Mac OS or on Linux and create Linux applications using these components. The third category of products, which is what we call the business products, which covers TMS X data, so to create business logic, REST APIs, backends. This is also a very crucial part. And then, of course, there is web core. So the four main categories to which we devote all our attention is VCL, FNC, the business products, and TMS web core.
I see. And can you provide maybe for people who are not familiar with TMS Web Core, what's the typical products or recommendation which you can provide for which products this solution will be good, or maybe for which products it won't be good? What do you think?
I think the range of applications that can be created by TMS Web Core is probably as wide as the range of applications that can be created with the FireMonkey framework or with the VCL component framework. For example, there is a customer who uses TMS Web Core to offer a web application that can be run from every device for helping people with mathematical formulas and to help them solve mathematical problems. On the other side, there is a totally different company with a totally different project who wants to use or is developing an application using TMS Web Core for dealing with the stock market. So a web client application from where you can track stocks and do transactions and things like that. So there are other people looking at or developing with web core, creating applications for example, on the road to take pictures of problems with products and sending the pictures showing the problems in things directly to the company for analysis. So it's really wide, a wide range of possibilities, and probably as wide as what people are doing with FireMonkey or with VCL. I personally do not see much limitations in TMS Web Core application when you compare these to FireMonkey applications or VCL applications. Quite the opposite, in fact. Things like integrating with an artificial intelligence library like TensorFlow becomes easy in a web core application, way easier than you would try to do the same thing from a VCL or a FireMonkey application. There exists such a high amount of existing code, libraries, functionality that you can easily interface with from a TMS web core application that it is actually way more than the component set or the functionality that is included in TMS web core itself. It's also, in my opinion, offering the easiness to interface with other libraries and very specific functionality that can then be easily integrated into these type of applications.
I see. Thank you, Bruno. And guys, it was the final question from me. Maybe you have any questions for Bruno. You have this unique chance. Bruno is very popular speaker on different and almost all Delphi conferences all over the Europe, and instead of going and paying a lot of money for the ticket, right now you have a direct line with Bruno. If you have any questions about uh, which solutions you have to use for your legacy software, how TMS can help you, you can ask right now until you guys try and or uh, uh, you can guys Bruno will process right now these questions for me. For the last questions for me, it's something like, what's the risks to using all these components? Of course, TMS is stable company, but you know that some companies can die, teams can be blurred on the and what is it? Which else risk except, for example, that the vendor will stop supporting of the components? Which else risk do we have? What do you think, Runa?
Um, that's a good question. Um, yeah, I personally do not think too much in terms of. I personally more see positive things and opportunities and possibilities. For us, it's a responsibility that is under no discussion whatsoever to do all that is needed to guarantee the stability of the company for probably as long as possible. Hopefully for another 24 years to come. But that is, in my opinion, and that is what I strive for every day to ensure that we are here today, we are here tomorrow, and we are here in another 5 years, 10 years to assist our customers and enthusiasts, Delphi Object Pascal developers, and to help them creating good software solutions.
No, this is if we are talking about your company, but yes, but you know that we have a lot of this old school coders which hate any third-party solutions. They want to develop everything from the scratch and keep their hands on the code. But anyway, Bruno, you can see the chat. So we have some a question about some licensing or some like
Yeah.
backward compatibility.
Well, before I handle that question, I want to say that one of my major concerns and one of the things that I really want to put my shoulders under is to support whatever is needed that young people pick up Delphi. So this is actually also a kind of invitation, an open invitation, that if people have ideas how we can support students and young developers to embrace Delphi. I very much would want to put my shoulders under it. It has been my own experience that working with students, um, when we work together with them, we can make them passionate about Delphi. I always say, give me 2 weeks and I make a student passionate about Delphi. The thing is,
Yeah.
I need to be able to get these 2 weeks. And so any ideas are always welcome. And we would really want to fully put our shoulders on it to help Delphi spread among young people. That's what I think is really needed, and I think Delphi has the potential. I have seen it myself with my own eyes, with young people being fascinated about the wide reach of range of possibilities that Delphi offers. And then there is this question in the chat about the generic VCL for Delphi 10.x. Well, the question suggests that there are components that aren't compatible with 10.3, but to be honest, I don't know of any TMS components that are at this moment not compatible with the 10.3. So I would suggest that Vladimir contacts us directly via email, and mentioning to me what exactly or what exact problem he experiences with 10.3 and a specific component, because as it is now and as far as I can think about, every product by now does support Delphi 10.3, and we are organizing ourselves, and that means internally the organization of how we manage the build process to streamline this even more, to enable us to roll out releases faster and roll out updates to new Delphi versions
Bruno, we
faster.
lost you.
Hello?
Guys, you can hear the contacts, my contacts and Bruno's. You can find me and Bruno in the Twitter. If you have any questions to me or Bruno, you can ask them directly. And if you have any questions and help, because I'm in helping like without not on the only commercial basis, of course, and just sign up on our posts. I don't know, Bruno, will you be here?
Yes, I'm still
Or
here.
maybe something happened with his internet connection. I don't know.
Hello, you hear me?
Anyway, guys, we are already we even not exceeded our limit. It's 1 hour and 12 minutes. I see, Bruno, something happened with your connection.
You see my messages?
Yes, Bruno, we can see your messages, but we can hear your voice.
You hear me?
Guys, if you have any questions, you can send them to Bruno's directly or to me. And our company is a consulting partner of TMS Software. Bruno is developing components, and we are implementing solutions using these components. Thank you guys for coming. I could say Bruno thank you for coming, but we are organizing this webinar together. I hope it's not the last our webinar together with Bruno and TMS. Maybe if you guys will have any suggestions, we can prepare more technical webinars and invite some teams from the guys from the Bruno's team, from our team who is developing components, and team who is implementing them and using them. And you're welcome, guys, for the future themes or subject, our future webinars. Thank you for coming. I'm very glad that we got so many people today, and even if because I know in Europe it's a period of vacations, and have your good vacations who was not on vacation this summer, and see you on the next webinars. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.